Hey, what's up, everyone, and welcome back to Cinematic Reviews. As always, I'm your host, Chris, and this is a show about all things movies and TV. I got another fantastic episode for you all today. I'm going to go over some box office numbers as well as my reaction to the release of the episode titles for the final season of Stranger Things, which comes out on Netflix on Thanksgiving. I'll also be giving my reaction to two of summer's biggest shows currently streaming right now. That'll lead into today's featured film, Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer, which is the sequel to the previous episode's movie, Fantastic Four. And then we'll wrap things up with another blockbuster showdown where I rank the two Fantastic Four movies that I have covered so far. A couple reminders at the top of the episode. You can watch the show every week at youtube.com/the cinematic reviews. You can also listen to the audio version on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and many more services. Feel free to hit that subscribe button and that follow button. It helps the podcast grow, and I thank everybody for following the show over the years. You can also follow the show on Facebook, Instagram, and X. That also helps the show out a lot. A lot of artwork from the episodes, as well as the rankings and other announcements, get thrown on there. A post was just released honoring Ozzy Osbourne, who unfortunately passed away at the age of 76. It's wild to think how many movie appearances he actually had over the years. My favorite would have to be Little Nicky. If you remember that at the final scene in that movie, one of Little Nicky's brothers turns into a bat, so Little Nicky gets the idea of summoning Ozzy Osbourne to bite the head off that bat. Obviously, a reference to when Ozzy famously bit the head off a bat during one of his concerts back in the day. So check out all those posts as well. There's the popcorn scale artwork as well that gets released whenever I announce my ranking for those movies on the popcorn scale. So with that, let's head into today's news and reactions. So Superman flies to $406 million so far. I would say it's pretty possible that Superman will hit the $500 million mark by the end of this coming weekend. I know Fantastic Four is the big release happening tomorrow, but I still think Superman will pull in strong numbers for another weekend for the film. I know a lot of movie experts, critics are targeting it to hit $1 billion at the end of its release. I don't think it's going to quite get to that mark. I would say realistically, it's probably looking at more of the $750 to $800 million range. I think its maximum cap would probably be $900 million, but I could be wrong. There's been a lot of strong reviews for the movie, a lot of people going to the theater multiple times seeing it. On my review, you can check that out on the channel. I gave a pretty positive review overall of the film. One of my most anticipated films of the year, and it didn't disappoint, which I'm very, very glad. There has been quite a few of this year's releases so far that have been kind of disappointing, but Superman seems to be pulling strong numbers, which is very good for James Gunn's first chapter in this universe that he is trying to build with the DCU. So that is very exciting. We also have Jurassic World Rebirth. It's still in theaters right now. It hit $648 million this past Sunday. I think that one is kind of winding down in its run. I think pre-orders are going right now for digital platforms, so that's probably going to get pulled from theaters here pretty quick. I think its cap, with all the other releases coming out, I think that was probably looking at 700 million maybe by the end of this weekend. And I think that's about as far as it's going to reach, which is really good. It didn't have a huge budget going for it. So it was one of the bigger movies this year, at least the summer. So that's really good for the franchise. We also have F1 that currently is sitting at, let's look here, 300 million, I think, overseas, which a total of 460 million, it looks like, for that one. That one will probably cap out at 500 million. I don't see it going that too far with all these releases with Superman going into its third week, Fantastic Four finally coming out, Jurassic World is winding down, like I just said. So I think 500 would be the max, which is really good for that Apple original film. That one, again, didn't have a massive budget, so it had quite a bit of profit. And I know a sequel is already in talks / in development, so that's really good. How to Train Your Dragon is closing in at about 600 million. I think the exact number is 589. That is actually already out on digital platforms. So I think that's kind of capped out there at 600 million, which is really good for the live action remake of that animated classic. So that kind of rounds out all of the box office numbers. I think there's the Smurfs out there. I think that got about 30 million. I don't see that one grossing too much with all the other films going on, and that one has kind of had some poor reviews that I've seen come through the streams. I Know What You Did Last Summer, which came out last weekend, that said not about 12 million. That one, again, it's in that horror genre, and it's a remake of another horror classic. So we'll see where that one goes. I don't expect that one to make a whole lot of money, but then again, that budget wasn't very massive either. So that, I think, is going to round up the box office right now. Well, I think Fantastic Four is still aiming at the 110, $120 million mark for its opening weekend. So very exciting for that movie and what that would bring to the box office. So Stranger Things finally released its titles for season 5. Let me pull that up here. I know this is great podcasting right now. Stranger Things. Okay. Here we go. So, episode 1. Oh, I lost it. Here we go. Episode 1 is The Crawl, which is a very interesting title for that. I wonder what is going on there. But the big one that caught my eye was episode 2, and that is the vanishing of Holly Wheeler, who kind of makes brief appearances throughout the past seasons. She, of course, is the sister to Nancy and Mike Wheeler. This kind of previews, maybe she gets sucked into the Upside Down, similar to Will and Barb. So that seems like that episode would be focused on getting Holly back. I know the trailer showed that shot of Mrs. Wheeler hugging Holly and what looked like some kind of water pool or something hiding from what I would guess is Vecna. I'm guessing that scene is where Holly gets taken from. So that's very exciting. We have the Turnbow Trap, which is chapter 3. Not exactly sure what that one will be about. Maybe they tried to set up a trap for Vecna, maybe. Chapter 4, we have the Sorcerer, which could be a Will-centered episode. He has always been associated with sorcery with their D&D games as Will the Wise, I think, is, if I remember right. Chapter 5 looks like Shock Jock, which maybe that could be a Steve-centered episode, maybe. I don't know. Maybe a jock gets electrocuted. I don't thinking outside of the box. Chapter 6, Escape from Kamazos. That must be some D&D term. I've never heard of that. That must be some kind of escape episode where they get trapped. Maybe that's where Holly Wheeler gets found and they have to escape this place. Chapter 7, The Bridge. That could possibly, I guess the first thing that comes to mind is making some kind of bridge between the Upside Down and the real world. Maybe they have to destroy it or make it or whatever it is. And then the final episode, Chapter 8, The Right Side Up, which I'm assuming is putting everything back together. We saw at the end of season 4 the Upside Down was coming into the existing world that our characters live in. So maybe this is like a resolution to everything that has happened over the 5 seasons. So really interesting titles. I think chapter 2 and chapter 8 give the most away. But I'm super excited. We have a couple episodes. If I can remember the breakdown, I think it's the first 3 episodes are coming out on Thanksgiving Day, and then the next set of episodes will come out Christmas, and then the final episodes will come out on New Year's. So Netflix is really being strategic and targeting those holidays for everybody to watch the final season of their hit show together. So that's really exciting stuff. Moving on to my 2 reactions to of the summer's biggest shows, The Bear season 4 and Ironheart, the newest Marvel show. So The Bear season 4, we get Jeremy Allen White coming back as Carmen, aka Carmy, as the head of the Bear restaurant in Chicago. Ebon Moss-Bachrach returns as Richie, who is one of my favorite characters in the show. We also get Sydney, Marcus, Tina, Sugar, who is the sister to Carmy. We get Neil back. We get Sweeps, a bunch. Basically, everybody comes back. Uncle. So season 4 kind of centers around Uncle basically giving the Bear an ultimatum. You have this timer. He literally sets a clock in the kitchen that's counting down to the day where they have to pay back Uncle, or he will repossess the restaurant and sell it for a profit. This isn't the greatest Bear season, but it was still a really great season to watch. We get to see the chaos unfold as Carmy and the rest of the gang try to make enough money to save the restaurant and pay back Uncle, while also kind of navigating through the critic world where they have multiple food critics coming through with some bad reviews, some really good reviews. Marcus, the baker of the group, ends up getting featured in one of the articles as one of the best up-and-coming chefs in Chicago, which was a really awesome moment for the character. We get Will Poulter coming back, who I absolutely love. I think that's the moment where I really got excited for this season, when he shows up to help out the Bear and to get that moving and get some fresh ideas to the door. So looking at the popcorn scale, I'm giving it 4 popcorn buckets. The show overall is definitely a 5 popcorn bucket show, but this 4th season is definitely, I think, the weakest of the series so far. Season 5 has been confirmed. I'm in the mindset now that season 5 could be the last season, just kind of looking at how this story is unfolding. I hope they kind of go that route. Breaking Bad is one that I like to reference a lot, where they decided to go 5 seasons, and they were really, really solid seasons. I think The Bear would be a great follow-up to that, where they have 5 really good or really decent seasons, and we'll just cap off the story. I don't want these really good shows to fall into the habit that was The Walking Dead, where they went on to seasons 10 and 11, which I think was 5 seasons too long. And now they have, 3 or 4 different spinoffs going on. I want The Bear to be just like Breaking Bad, where it's a kind of a contained story. We can just rewatch these 5 seasons or 6 seasons that they really need to over and over again. And we get this bookend, start to finish, really, really awesome story about a chef and how he creates one of the best restaurants in Chicago. So check out The Bear. All 4 seasons are currently streaming right now on Hulu. Now we have the newest Marvel show out on Disney Plus, and that is Ironheart. This is kind of a sequel to Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, where we were introduced to the character Riri Williams, who has kind of slowly been put into place to kind of take over the mantle of Iron Man that has been vacant since Tony Stark's death at the end of Avengers Endgame. I liked the Riri Williams character. She was one of the bright spots in the Black Panther Wakanda Forever film. We also get introduced to Parker Robbins, played by Anthony Ramos. He is the villain or antagonist of the series. He is under the possession or manipulation, whatever you want to call it, of this magical hood that gives him powers. It is revealed at the end of the series that it is Mephisto who is actually behind everything, including giving Parker the hood. Um, Mephisto was a huge, I guess, fan theory back when WandaVision was coming out, and now we finally get that portrayal in the Marvel universe. We also get introduced to Obadiah Stane's son, Ezekiel, who's played by Alden Ehrenreich, who you probably recognize from Solo, the Star Wars universe, where he plays a younger version of Han Solo. He was really good in there. I think that's probably one of his better roles so far. He ends up getting biologically enhanced by Parker to have these really cool electrical technological powers, I guess you could say. He was kind of like Whiplash and Obadiah Stane mixed into one, I guess would be the best way to describe it. We also get some really cool AI introduction into here where through some weird glitch, Riri's best friend, who unfortunately passed away sometime before this series occurs, she is kind of brought back to life through AI. She has some of the memories that her friend Natalie possessed, which is a really cool thing to introduce. As soon as that happened, my mind automatically went to, okay, what if Tom Holland's Spider-Man meets up with Riri and he wants to make his AI into Tony Stark? And that's kind of how Marvel is able to get Robert Downey Jr. Back into the universe. I think that would be interesting, but I can see, the backlash of that from the fans where they're like, oh, Tony Stark isn't really dead. His death in Endgame didn't really mean anything. I know that's been the huge negative for him being cast as Doctor Doom in Avengers Doomsday coming up. But that's just kind of where my mind went to. Maybe Marvel is setting up to where we get appearances by Robert Downey Jr. as the AI for Peter Parker, and he can still be that mentor figure to him as he navigates life and being a hero in New York. So just kind of, the gears turning in my mind on the different things that this show opens up. This was a show I wasn't planning on really watching right away, but my curiosity got the better of me, and I've seen every Marvel project since, the first Iron Man movie came out in 2008. So I kind of had to commit to the universe that I put so much time into, and I was really surprised. I actually enjoyed this show. There's a bit of, maybe half episodes or full episodes where it's kind of like, okay, this is kind of dragging on. It's kind of boring. But as the show kind of developed and you kind of realize what this show is doing, I really appreciated it. I really enjoyed it, mainly because of Dominique Thorne's portrayal as Riri. I really like that character. So I'm very curious to see what the future brings for Ironheart. My guess would be she becomes that new Iron Man figure in the Avengers. Maybe she starts off with the Young Avengers that Marvel has been teasing with, and then as she goes through that journey, she becomes part of one of the full-fledged Avengers team. So really, really excited to see what they do with the Riri Williams character in the universe. Looking at the popcorn scale, I'm giving this 3 popcorn buckets. This was tough to rank. I have 2 separate rankings actually, and I'll post both of these after my Fantastic Four for Steps review episode. But I've got Ironheart slated at number 38 out of 50. We have had 50 projects in Marvel. That is wild. Definitely the biggest franchise I think that we've got so far. Star Wars is starting to creep up there a little bit, but this is 50 projects is massive. But I got Ironheart slated at 38 on the overall list, and I also have a separate list that I've been doing with all the TV shows together, and I've got that at number 6 out of 12. I don't count the What If series or any of the animated stuff. Those are kind of just, in my mind, multiverse offshoot shows. I'm looking at like the main like live action projects. So that's why I only have 12 shows on this list. So 6 out of 12, right at the dead center middle. I was expecting to put this like way bottom on both lists, but it's it really surprised me how much I enjoyed the show. So check out Ironheart right now on Disney Plus. It's a really easy watch. It's about 35-minute, 40-minute episodes. There's only 6 of them, so it's a really contained story, similar to the Obi-Wan Kenobi series on the Star Wars franchise side, where that was only like 6 or 8 episodes, and they're pretty decent amount of time episodes. So check that out today if you are curious on where Marvel is sitting at right now. That'll do it for the news and reaction segments of today's episode. Let's head into our featured film of the day, Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer.
As you may know, there have been unusual occurrences all over the world.
These were taken by one of our spy satellites 3 days ago.
We need a way to locate and intercept that object.
What is it?
We were hoping you could tell us.
It's here.
That's bad.
That's really bad.
We have to destroy this thing.
Your encounter with a surfer has affected your molecules. It could cause you to temporarily switch powers.
You like to volunteer?
No, hey! Oh my God! Come on!
We can't handle this alone.
Everywhere this thing goes, 8 days later, the planet dies. All that you know is at an end.
So Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer released on June 15th, 2007. It was once again directed by Tim Story, who also directed the first film back in 2005. I think all the cast pretty much returned to the film, all the crew. And I'll go over those cast members here shortly. Looking at the box office for this film, the budget was $130 million, which isn't too bad for 2007, and it grossed worldwide $301 million, which seems kind of low, but when you look at the budget, it's like, okay, it almost nearly tripled the budget, which seems good, but the studio did mark this as a flop, which ultimately axed the potential third film that was in early developments at the time. I think it would have been great to get a third film with this cast, with Tim Story. I know these aren't the greatest films in the world, but it's far better than that 2015 movie that we unfortunately got, where they tried to reboot the franchise and it just ultimately did not work. That is why we are getting now the MCU's take on the Fantastic Four later this week. Fantastic Four from 2015 will be the next episode on the show, so I will be tearing that to shreds for sure, because that was a movie I was very excited for. Went to the theater, came out just completely bummed, and did not like it at all. So I'm excited to just tear a new one on that film. But we're going to focus on Rise of the Silver Surfer, which I enjoy still. It's been a few years since I've watched this film, and it's not as bad as I remember it being, actually. I enjoyed it a lot, especially the power swapping with Johnny Storm in there. That's kind of the big entertaining thing that happens in here. I really like Silver Surfer in here. I think the design of him is really cool. I love the voice, and I'll get into who voices him because I always forget that he was in here. The stunt actor Doug Jones, who plays the physical uh, person on screen of the Silver Surfer, was really good. Um, yeah, Doctor Doom. I got some thoughts on Doctor Doom. Wasn't great in here. I liked him much better in the first film. I think there had to have been some scheduling conflicts or something, because Julian McMahon, who plays him once again, wasn't in here a whole lot. I wonder if his obligations with like Nip Tuck and all that kind of got in the way of this film. Uh, but still, he kind of gives his best shot at it to what he was given script wise. But the main focus in here seems to be really Silver Surfer and Johnny Storm. They kind of just put Doctor Doom on the back burner, which I'm totally fine. And then, of course, I've always had issues with the portrayal of Galactus in here. That's one of the big negatives of the film for me, and what really holds it back from being a great Marvel film overall. So, looking at the cast, like I said, pretty much everybody returns. Johan Griffith returns as Reed Richards, aka Mr. Fantastic. He was once again really good. Kind of gets set in the back burner a little bit, which is funny to say because his wedding with Sue Storm is such a huge moment in comic book history as well as this movie. But it feels like the story that they wrote for this movie kind of just gets overtaken by Chris Evans's performance as Johnny Storm. But Johan Griffith is really good at Mr. Fantastic. I'm curious to see how he goes up against Pedro Pascal's performance when I go and rank all these characters when I go through that review for First Steps. Jessica Alba returns as Sue Storm, the fiance to Mr. Fantastic and sister to Johnny Storm. Jessica Alba is great. I've always loved her. Again, great performance by her as Sue Storm. I think I like Vanessa Kirby really good, and I'm really excited to see her portrayal of Sue Storm. But I have a feeling in my heart that Jessica Alba is going to outrank her when I look at the Sue Storms. Because I have a soft spot for Jessica Alba, and this is the movies that I connect her to the most. As a kid growing up, the first movie I thought of her was, oh, that's Sue Storm from Fantastic Four. So, but of course, she's gone on to bigger and better things since these movies, and she's a terrific actress and person. Chris Evans, who is the star of this franchise, I guess you could say, as Johnny Storm, aka Human Torch. Love him in this film with the power swapping. He makes it very entertaining, especially when he swaps powers with Ben Grimm when he becomes the Thing, and Michael Chiklis gets to come out for a scene and play with the fire a little bit. It was really cool how they made Chris Evans look like a Thing, where he keeps his hair. He's really jacked, but he's got the same clothing on. I think the hair was a really interesting choice instead of making him bald, which probably would have been a little weird. I think the way Ben's power works, it just kind of takes what body you're currently doing and just makes it in The Rock. He's bald because Michael Chiklis or Ben Grimm is bald. So I get the choice to put the hair in. I just think it would be really interesting to see what Chris Evans would have looked like bald in that scene. But he's still really good. The CGI, when he turned into Reed Richards' power, was really weird and very off-putting. The CGI, I'll talk about a little bit of that more too, but that was really early 2000s CGI, and it just looks weird now after everything we've seen the past few years. And then Michael Chiklis returns as Ben Grimm, like I said, aka The Thing. He was great. I love him. He, of course, is dating Alicia, played by Kerry Washington. She gets a little bit more to do in here. I think she was in like 2 scenes in the first movie. In here, I think she's in like 3 or 4 or 5 scenes. She's the maid of honor to Sue Storm's wedding, which is great. But yeah, I love Kerry Washington, love Michael Chiklis. I love their chemistry. Same thing with Sue and Reed. I love Jessica Alba's and Johan Griffith's chemistry. I think they work really, really well together. I talked about him already. Julian McMahon returns as Victor Von Doom, a.k.a. Dr. Doom. Silver Surfer comes in, basically wakes him up. He's all distorted in that box that the Fantastic Four left him in at the end of the first film. But with his contact with Silver Surfer, he ends up becoming, Julian McMahon again. He ends up stealing the board from Silver Surfer, and he's transformed again into this weird cosmic version of Doctor Doom, which was really interesting. But Julian McMahon is really good, even though he doesn't get as much to do in here as he did in the first film. And then Silver Surfer, who is voiced by Lawrence Fishburne, Mr. Morpheus himself. I always forget that he was the voice of Silver Surfer, and it makes sense because it's such a great voice. I love the choice to have someone like Lawrence Fishburne's caliber of acting voicing such an iconic Marvel character. He did a very, very good job. I love the deep, somber voice that Lawrence Fishburne chose to use for this character. It worked really, really well. I love it. I remember seeing that first trailer where I think Silver Surfer says, like, the world as you know it is at an end. Like that, the way Lawrence Fishburne delivered that line was really good. I love it. That kind of rounds out the cast. This movie, of course, suffers from what I like to call the sequel curse. Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man 3 suffered from that. Andrew Garfield's Amazing Spider-Man 2 suffered from it. The X-Men movies suffered from it. Many other movies suffer from it. But this one really did. Fantastic Four, when that was announced and when the trailers were coming out back in 04, 05, that was a big movie for 20th Century Fox and for the Marvel universe as a whole. We've never seen the Fantastic Four on screen. Everyone was super excited. I remember all the posters, the promotions everywhere. It was a huge movie for them. And it did pretty well at the box office. And then this movie comes out. There's a lot of hype behind it. People are like, oh, great, another Fantastic Four movie because we love the first one. And it just kind of wasn't what everybody was expecting. It wasn't on that same caliber of quality. But after looking at it this year, we've had a lot of really bad Marvel movies since then, and this doesn't even hit my top 10 worst Marvel films. So looking at this again through what we've gone through these last few years, it's better than I remember it being. And I'll go over my top 10 worst Marvel films on the next episode because that movie, Fantastic Four 2015, is definitely on that list. So I'm very excited to release that. But back to the sequel talk. The biggest probably opportunity or movie that really kind of broke this sequel curse was Top Gun Maverick. 30 years since Top Gun 1. Everyone's like, oh, there's no way it's going to work. It's been 30 years. Tom Cruise is getting older. They just can't replicate how awesome Tom Cruise was in Top Gun. And then they go and just blow everybody's minds. It has been arguably better than the first film, which doesn't happen a lot. The only other big example would be, The Dark Knight is a better sequel than, The Batman Begins. Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back the sequel was better than the original Star Wars. Otherwise, we have Happy Gilmore 2 coming out this weekend as well. So, a lot of eyes will be on that. Like, hey, it's been 30 years. There's no way this is going to work. They're going to try to Top Gun Maverick. But I'm still super excited for Happy Gilmore 2. I'll also be reviewing that on the show sometime next week. This sequel curse is real, and this was part of the mix. I would have loved to have seen 3 or 4 movies in this universe. I think maybe if Chris Evans didn't, land the role of Captain America in the Marvel universe, maybe he would have been able to get a 3rd or 4th film greenlit because he seems to have really loved the character and comic books in general. He's done many, many different comic book roles throughout the years. But yeah, it's just unfortunate that this movie suffered from that sequel curse and just kind of annihilated the possibility of a big franchise. So the action sequences are really good. Most of them surrounds Johnny Storm and Silver Surfer. I know the iconic scene that I remember the most from this movie is when Silver Surfer sucks up the missile through his board. As a kid, that just blew my mind. I was like, holy crap. He just sucked up that big missile into his board like it was nothing. And then we get that scene right after where he's just kind of flicking the missiles out of the way and they're exploding around him without even, breaking a sweat. And then, the power swapping was really cool. That whole scene in London where Johnny is kind of out of control. He's accidentally swapping powers with them and they're trying to get that big Ferris wheel back up and running. That was really cool. We get Dr. Doom taking over Silver Surfer's board. So then Johnny Storm has to take on all the powers of the team and basically become the Super Skrull and fight Dr. Doom in the sky, which is really cool action sequence in there. Probably my favorite part of the movie for sure was when he became the Super Skrull and fought Dr. Doom in the air. For those that aren't familiar with that reference, Super Skrull, that is the big, I guess, kind of a big moment in the Marvel universe. I know a lot of people forget about it because there's been so many big events in that Marvel comic universe. But basically what happens is a Skrull, who is a shape-shifting being, takes on all the powers of the Fantastic Four and is just one big old super powered being. Emilia Clarke, who stars in Secret Invasion on the Marvel Cinematic Universe side, she kind of does her take of the Super Skrull in that one where she takes on, 20 different powers. This is kind of where it started, though, movie-wise, where Tim Story got this idea from reading the comics and was like, hey, what if Johnny Storm had all the powers of the Fantastic Four and he has to fight Dr. Doom by himself? I thought that was a pretty neat idea. And it's really cool on camera where he's turning invisible, he's stretching around Dr. Doom while also burning him up with his Human Torch powers. It was really cool. And then, of course, he stretches and turns his fist into the Thing's fist and says the iconic line, to quote a friend of mine, it's clobbering time. I thought that was a really awesome, let's freaking go moment as a kid. Even as an adult, I got really excited rewatching it for the podcast today. So the action is really good, really, really solid. I think it's a little bit better than the first film. The first film was really about them just discovering their powers and the big action sequences towards the end of the film. This one, we get a lot of bit of different, action sequences throughout the movie. And it helps having a character like Silver Surfer who's flying around, Johnny Storm's chasing him. And then we get the Dr. Doom twist at the end where he takes over the board and Johnny has to take him down. So the CGI looks good in most of the fight sequences. The worst scene is still the stretching of Mr. Fantastic. It's just they never could nail it in the early 2000s. In the 2015 version, I think they still couldn't quite get it. Miles Teller looked kind of weird when he stretched. Looking at the few shots that we've gotten from the MCU's version and the trailers leading up to the movie this weekend, looks like they might have got something going with Pedro's take on Mr. Fantastic. It looks a lot better, but I'm very curious to see what the final product looks like in the movie when we get that, because I don't think they've quite nailed down that aspect of the character. Johnny Storm's power still looks really good. The Thing, of course, they didn't have to do too much CGI on him because that suit was a prosthetic suit once again. Sue Storm's invisible powers were pretty well done CGI wise. They looked pretty normal, or natural, I guess is the better term. So yeah, the stretching one really just kind of pops out and kind of, it's like, ooh, that looks kind of off. But you have to remember, early 2000s, they were discovering this technology. So they're just kind of testing everything that they could. So I think they did the best that they could at the time. But now in 2025, watching it after the awesome CGI that we've gotten over the years in movies, it's just really like, oh, that looks really, really bad. So the big moment, which is also a huge comic book moment, is the Reed and Sue's wedding, which is a very public wedding. Johnny, of course, makes that funny line of, we'll be auctioning off, pictures of the first kiss and all that stuff. So that is probably one of the biggest moments in Marvel comic history, next to probably the wedding of Peter Parker and Mary Jane Watson. But this is a really big moment in the Marvel comics. So it was really cool to see that on screen. I wonder if we'll get any kind of flashback or any scenes where Vanessa Kirby and Pedro Pascal get married. Because it seems like that story kind of throws us in the middle where they've been a team for years. So I wonder if we'll get any shots of their wedding, which I think would be really cool. It's such a big comic book moment. This movie also kind of tackles the Fantastic Four as a team being really big public figures, which again looks like the MCU is going that same route where the world knows of them, they love them, they got action figures, they've got TV shows that they're walking on, they got posters everywhere. Same thing here where everybody knows it. You know, the wedding is such a huge moment. It's being broadcast on cable network, news channels around the world. So it was really cool to see that the Fantastic Four is very public. The first one to do that in the MCU was Tony Stark, of course, at the end of Iron Man, where he's basically like, I am Iron Man. So now everybody knows Tony Stark is Iron Man. So I thought that was a really cool aspect to include in the sequel. They kind of teased it a little bit in the first film, but now everybody, it's been a while. I can't remember the exact timeline, maybe a year or so since these two movies. So everybody just seems to love them as celebrities, essentially. I've already mentioned it a bunch of times, but I have a note in here about the power switching with Johnny. That's the most fun that I had watching this movie was the power switching with Johnny. I thought it was a really cool idea. I think they pulled it off as well as they could have. I would love to see that happen to Joseph Quinn, who now plays Human Torch in the MCU. That'd be really cool to see him kind of do the power swapping. But that's the best part, I think, of the movie, and then the most entertaining for sure. And most of it's because of Chris Evans's performance. He's just a really good actor and very entertaining on screen. So, and then Galactus, that's the other note I have on here. That's really, aside from the CGI stuff, that's the biggest drawback for me for making this for considering this a really good Marvel movie. It's just the choice to make it a cloud was just wrong from the beginning. Looks like the MCU is going to do it some justice by having it an actual figure like it is in the comics. It's a huge figure with the ridiculous big purple helmet. But they ultimately went with the cloud. Same thing with, that terrible Green Lantern movie where they made Parallax a cloud storm. And it just doesn't work. It's kind of ridiculous that you think of it now where Silver Surfer is the herald of this space cloud. It doesn't work, and it's a very unfortunate that that was the first portrayal of Galactus was this storm cloud instead of the massive Titan being that he is in the comics. So I'm very excited to see the right way to do Galactus in this upcoming Fantastic Four movie. Jotted down some fun facts that I found out about this movie. A new prosthetic suit was developed for Michael Chiklis' performance as a thing. It provided more ventilation and was easier to remove so that Michael Chiklis wasn't roasting in that suit. If you remember on the last episode, I mentioned that they installed, little pieces of the suit that can be removed, and they were like spraying water on him. This is really cool that they cut down on the time that it took for him to get in the suit, and they could take pieces off for ventilation, and he can move around a lot easier. So that was very smart. Jessica Alba wore a blonde wig because her hair suffered from bleaching it in the first film. You can really notice that she is wearing a wig in here, it's unfortunate because it looked a lot better in the first film because it was done naturally. And it's kind of off-putting now with the blonde wig. So it really sucks that her hair had to suffer for a really great look in a movie. But I totally understand, this movie's not worth destroying your hair for. Just throw on a wig. I get it. It's just, you can really notice it when you put pictures side by side from each film. So the forest scenes were shot in the same location, actually, as the first three X-Men films. So if you remember those films, those shots of Wolverine running around in the forest, that is the same forest as in this movie where they capture Silver Surfer, which makes sense. Both franchises were produced by 20th Century Fox, so they're probably like, hey, how can we use this location in other films. So I thought that was interesting. Originally, Nick Fury was written to appear in the film, but was later replaced by General Hager, who recruits Reed Richards to develop a tracker for Silver Surfer. I think it would have been interesting to get Nick Fury in here, but I totally understand why. Um, Looking at the dates that these came out, Iron Man comes out a year later. And if you remember, Nick Fury is teased at the end of that in the post-credit scene as developing the Avengers Initiative. So I'm thinking, as 20th Century Fox was developing this film, they had the idea of Nick Fury. Maybe Marvel got caught wind of it. I think Paramount actually might have produced that first Iron Man. That one's a little weird because like Disney Marvel didn't really come into big effect until I think like Iron Man 2 or Thor. Because I think Universal did The Incredible Hulk, which is the second film in the MCU. Iron Man was done by like Paramount or something. So they must have caught wind that 20th Century Fox wanted to use Nick Fury, and they probably called him out like, hey, hold on. We're going to use Nick Fury to set up our new universe. So let's get him out of the Fantastic Four movie. We don't want too many Nick Furies running around. So I think that's really what happened was Marvel caught wind of it, and they're like, hey, ixnay on the Nick Fury. We're gonna be using it to set up our franchise. I already mentioned this before, but Doug Jones, who's known for playing Abe in the Hellboy series, which I really, really love, he brought Silver Surfer to life on screen by wearing a prosthetic suit that was developed by Spectral Motion, a new VFX program from Vita Digital augmented Silver Surfer's reflective surface. So we can thank that company for making him look awesome because Silver Surfer looked really cool. And it was really cool that they had that program and that company develop the look and the suit that Doug Jones wore. It was really, really well done. And then the last bit of fun fact that I had, Jaimin Hansu and Timothy Olyphant both auditioned for the role of Silver Surfer. Timothy Olyphant, I can't see that working. Jaimin Hansu, I could, he's got a really cool voice, and that would have been interesting to have as a Silver Surfer, but I think they got it right with Doug Jones playing the physical version of Silver Surfer and then having Lawrence Fishburne do the voiceover work for the character. I think those are interesting choices, but I think they nailed it with Lawrence Fishburne and Doug Jones for sure. So, but yeah, that I really enjoyed watching this again. It's been a few years since I've seen this one and the first film. Growing up, in the early 2000s, this one and Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man were the movies I watched the most, Marvel-wise. So it was really, really fun to kind of go back down memory lane to rewatch these for the Fantastic Four season and to get ready for the new take on the Marvel's first family. So, if you haven't seen this film in a while, definitely watch it. I think it's now on Disney Plus. So go ahead and check that out. I have it in my digital library. I have them on DVD as well. So yeah, definitely check this one and the first movie out if you haven't in a while. I love doing a back-to-back feature with these because it kind of is like one big movie in a way by the way they kind of ended and start this one. So it was a really fun rewatch. I'm super excited for Fantastic Four coming out. I'm actually seeing it the first day it comes out, which I believe is July 24th. So it'll be Thursday. So very excited as a Fantastic Four fan right now. So we're going to end the episode like we always do with our ranking segment. We're going to have another blockbuster showdown. So stay tuned. So the blockbuster showdown for today's episode is Fantastic Four versus Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer. This was a tough ranking. I've got them both pretty close. For the popcorn scale, I've got them both at 3 popcorn buckets. I think in my rankings as Fantastic Four so far, let me pull up that. Of course, it is an incomplete list because I haven't seen the newest one. But yeah, I've got them back to back in my Fantastic Four ranking so far. Um, I've got the first Fantastic Four film slightly above it in my rankings, mainly because of the portrayal of Galactus, and some of the CGI just looked a lot worse than the first film for some reason. Jessica Alba's blonde wig was a little off-putting. I think the first movie, as kind of a smaller, contained story, was really well done. It's very iconic to me. I remember seeing both of these in theaters, being blown away by the first one. The second one, not so much. Even though I do like it more now after all these years. Um, but I think overall, Fantastic Four, the first one in this double feature, is slightly better than the second film, Rise of the Silver Surfer. So it's a tough ranking. They're very close for me, quality rise, but I think overall Fantastic Four is better than Rise of the Silver Surfer. So I will be posting those popcorn scales on social media pages, and then once the Fantastic Four season has concluded on the show, I will be posting this finalized Fantastic Four ranking on there as well. So looking ahead, like I said, I'm gonna cover the Fantastic Four 2015 version on the next episode of the show, and then next week it'll be kind of busy because I will be taking a break, going down to Arizona for a few days. So I'm gonna do some pre-recording this weekend, and I'm gonna release 2 episodes next weekend. Next week, Fantastic Four for Steps, and then the review episode for Happy Gilmore 2, which hits Netflix on Friday. So really awesome, exciting review episodes coming up in the next week or so. So be on the lookout for those. I try to announce those episodes ahead of time so you can rewatch the movie and get ready for my thoughts on it. So until next time, it's clobberin time.